On his birthday, a rich young CEO decides to escape his family's empty parties and spend the day alone in a park. But his fate changes when a poor girl with eyes full of hope invites him to join her and her mother for dinner that evening. He accepts without knowing that he will find, in that small apartment lit by a single candle, something that no amount of money can buy. At that simple dinner, he discovers that being truly loved is worth more than any wealth or success he has ever achieved. But his life takes a completely unexpected turn. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you're watching us. We'll keep going. The spring sunshine bathed Central Park in a golden glow, but Ethan Blake couldn't feel its warmth. 34 years old today, and all he wanted was to be alone. He adjusted his designer watch, a birthday gift to himself, and settled on an isolated bench overlooking the lake, away from the cheerful weekend crowds. His phone vibrated again. Probably his executive assistant, or perhaps his mother calling, to remind him about the extravagant birthday gala the Blake family traditionally hosted at their Hampton estate, a celebration he had deliberately abandoned this year, much to his family's dismay. "What's the point?" he muttered, silencing the device without looking at it. As CEO of Pinnacle Innovations, one of New York's fastest-growing tech companies, Ethan had everything money could buy: a penthouse overlooking the city, a collection of luxury cars, designer, clothes and investments worth millions. By society's standards, he was the epitome of success. Yet sitting here, watching ordinary people living their ordinary lives, couples holding hands, children chasing bubbles, seniors feeding pigeons, he felt a hollowness so profound it physically ached. His family never understood. Born into old money, the Blakes measured success by social connections and appearances. His decision to decline a position in the family's banking empire to start his own tech company had been viewed as rebellion rather than ambition. Despite building Pinnacle from nothing into a $500 million enterprise in just 8 years, his parents still introduced him as their entrepreneurial son with thinly veiled disappointment. The birthday galas were the worst, parading him before potential business partners and eligible socialites like a prized thoroughbred. Last year, he'd overheard his mother telling a friend how she hoped he would finally grow up and join William at the bank. After 3 decades, they still couldn't accept that his vision was different from theirs. A jogger passed by, nodding politely. Ethan returned the gesture automatically, then checked his watch again. Just another birthday, just another year of empty achievements. Nearby, a child's laughter pierced his melancholy. Ethan looked up to see a little girl in a faded red coat, skipping along the path. Her blonde hair bounced with each step, wild and untamed, catching sunlight like spun gold. She couldn't be more than 3 or 4, and her joy seemed so genuine it made his chest tighten. The girl stopped suddenly, noticing him. Without hesitation, she changed direction and bounded toward his bench, her smile revealing a missing front tooth. "Hi," she greeted, stopping directly in front of him. "Why are you so sad?" Ethan blinked, surprised by the direct question. "I'm not sad," he replied automatically. The child tilted her head, studying him with unsettling perception. "Yes, you are. Your eyes look like when my teddy gets left in the rain." Despite himself, Ethan smiled. "That's quite the observation." "I'm Lily," she announced proudly. "I'm almost 4. "Nice to meet you, Lily. I'm Ethan." "Is today special?" she asked, pointing to the small gift bag beside him, a token from his assistant that he hadn't bothered to open. "It's my birthday," he admitted reluctantly. Lily's eyes widened with delight. "Your birthday, that's the bestest day. You should have cake and presents and everyone singing." Before Ethan could respond, a worried voice called out, "Lily, Lily, where did you go?" A young woman hurried up the path, relief washing over her face when she spotted the child. "Lily, you know you're not supposed to run off." She reached them, slightly out of breath, grocery bags hanging from both hands. "Mommy, I found a birthday boy," Lily announced excitedly. "He's sad because he doesn't have a party." The woman's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she said to Ethan. "She's very friendly." Ethan took in the woman's appearance: worn jeans, a simple blue sweater with frayed cuffs, and tired eyes that somehow still managed to look kind. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe late 20s, with the same golden hair as her daughter, though hers was pulled back in a practical ponytail. "It's fine," he assured her. "No harm done. We're having chicken tonight," Lily declared suddenly, "with mashed potatoes and gravy. It's my favorite. You should come for dinner because it's your birthday." "Lily," her mother's embarrassment deepened, "you can't just invite strangers to dinner." "But he's sad, Mommy, and it's his birthday. Nobody should be sad on their birthday." The woman looked mortified. "I'm really sorry. She doesn't understand boundaries yet." Something about the genuine concern in the child's face and the honest embarrassment of her mother struck Ethan. When was the last time anyone had cared about his happiness without an agenda? "Actually," he heard himself saying, "I don't have plans tonight." Both mother and daughter stared at him with surprise. "Oh," the woman said, clearly flustered. We weren't really. It's just a simple dinner." "Please," Lily bounced on her toes, "please come to our birthday dinner." The woman hesitated, shifting her grocery bags from one hand to the other. We live in a very modest apartment. Nothing fancy." "That sounds perfect," Ethan said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. After another moment of hesitation, the woman nodded. "I'm Sarah Collins. Ethan Blake." "Well, Mr. Blake, just Ethan, please." "Ethan," she corrected with a small smile. "If you're serious, dinner will be ready around 6. We're in the West Side Apartments on 83rd Street, apartment 4B. "I'll bring dessert," he offered. "Chocolate cake," Lily exclaimed, "with sprinkles." Sarah laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to brighten the air around them. "Don't feel obligated," she told Ethan. "But if you do come, just know it's nothing special." As they walked away, Lily turning to wave enthusiastically, Ethan felt something shift inside him. The hollowness receded slightly, replaced by a curious warmth. He watched them until they disappeared around a bend in the path, the little girl skipping and the mother listening attentively to whatever story her daughter was excitedly sharing. For the first time in years, Ethan found himself looking forward to something that had nothing to do with business deals or family obligations. Just a simple dinner with strangers who had no idea who he was or what he was worth. Hours later, standing outside apartment 4B with a chocolate cake in hand, Ethan hesitated. What was he doing here? This wasn't his world. He was about to turn away when the door opened, revealing Lily in pajamas decorated with stars. "You came," she squealed, grabbing his hand and pulling him inside before he could reconsider. "Mommy, the birthday boy is here." The apartment was small but warm, filled with the aroma of roasting chicken and fresh bread. Christmas lights had been strung across the living room ceiling, casting a soft glow over mismatched furniture. On the walls, framed crayon drawings hung alongside a few photographs. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She'd changed into a simple dress, her hair now falling in soft waves around her shoulders. "You actually came," she said, sounding both surprised and pleased. "I said I would." Ethan held up the cake box, with sprinkles as requested. Lily clapped her hands in delight. "This is going to be the best birthday dinner ever." The dining table was small, covered with a checked tablecloth. 3 mismatched plates had been set out, alongside a single candle in a holder. Nothing like the elegant 12-course meals served on fine china at his family's galas. Yet as Ethan took his seat, with Lily chattering happily beside him and Sarah serving a simple but delicious meal, he realized this birthday dinner felt more meaningful than any celebration he'd had in years. "Happy birthday to you," Lily sang suddenly, slightly off-key but with enthusiastic sincerity. Sarah joined in, her melodic voice balancing her daughter's exuberance. Ethan felt his throat tighten with unexpected emotion. When they finished, Lily looked at him expectantly. "You have to make a wish and blow out the candle," she instructed seriously. Looking at the single flame flickering between them, at the child's hopeful face and the mother's gentle smile, Ethan made a wish for the first time since childhood. As he blew out the candle, something told him this birthday might mark the beginning of something far more significant than another year of life. The following weeks passed in a blur of unexpected moments that gradually became a cherished routine for Ethan. After that first dinner, he found himself returning to Sarah and Lily's apartment, each visit feeling more natural than the last. On Tuesdays, he brought children's books that made Lily's eyes light up with wonder. Thursdays became movie nights, the three of them huddled on the worn sofa watching animated films that Ethan had never seen, but quickly grew to enjoy. Weekends often found him helping with household repairs, changing burned-out light bulbs, fixing the temperamental refrigerator, or assembling the bookshelves Sarah had found at a second-hand store. Today was Saturday, and Ethan arrived carrying grocery bags filled with ingredients for dinner. He'd promised to cook, despite Sarah's skepticism about his culinary abilities. "I'll have you know I make excellent pasta," he'd insisted the previous evening. "Microwaving doesn't count as cooking," she'd teased back, growing more comfortable with their friendly banter. Now, as he knocked on the familiar door of apartment 4B, Ethan realized how much he looked forward to these moments. The door swung open to reveal Lily, her face breaking into an immediate smile. "Mr. Ethan," she exclaimed, using the name she'd adopted for him. "You're here, I drawed you a picture." "Drew," Sarah corrected gently, appearing behind her daughter. She wore jeans and a simple green sweater that brought out the flecks of emerald in her hazel eyes. "She drew you a picture." "Well, I can't wait to see it," Ethan said, stepping inside. The apartment that had once seemed cramped now felt cozy and inviting. "And I brought everything for my world-famous spaghetti." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "World-famous, huh? Does the world know about this hidden talent?" "The important parts do," he replied with a wink that made her cheeks flush slightly. While Ethan unpacked groceries in the tiny kitchen, Lily proudly showed him her latest artwork, a crayon masterpiece featuring 3 stick figures holding hands. "This is me, this is Mommy, and this is you," she explained, pointing to each figure in turn. "It's beautiful," Ethan said sincerely, touched by his inclusion in her family portrait. "Can I hang it in my office?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Then you can see us even when you're working with the important people." "These are the important people," Ethan murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Sarah caught his eye over Lily's head, her expression softening. There was a moment of understanding between them, a recognition of something neither was ready to name. "All right, Chef Blake," Sarah broke the silence. "Let's see these culinary skills in action." As Ethan cooked, occasionally consulting a recipe, on his phone Sarah set the table, and Lily arranged her stuffed animals as an audience for the dinner performance. The domesticity of it all struck Ethan. How natural it felt to be here, how different from his solitary evenings in his penthouse, overlooking the city. "So how's work?" Sarah asked, leaning against the counter beside him. "Still fighting with your business partner?" Ethan sighed, stirring the sauce. "Victor's getting more persistent. He thinks I'm distracted lately." "Are you?" There was a hint of concern in her voice. "Not distracted," Ethan corrected. "Just reevaluating priorities." The truth was, Victor Reynolds had been increasingly vocal about Ethan's absences from after-hours networking events and weekend strategy sessions. "The company doesn't run itself while you're playing house," he'd remarked just yesterday, his tone sharp with disapproval. "What about you?" Ethan asked, changing the subject. "How's the job search going?" Sarah had recently lost her position as an administrative assistant when her company downsized. "I have an interview at Madison Elementary on Monday," she said, "for a teacher's aide position. The hours would be perfect for Lily's preschool schedule." "That's great," Ethan said sincerely. "They'd be lucky to have you." "It's not much money," she admitted, "but it includes benefits which we need. And I've always wanted to work with children." As they ate dinner, Ethan's pasta sauce receiving mixed reviews. "It's good, but it could use more oregano," Sarah suggested kindly. Lily entertained them with stories from preschool, complete with dramatic reenactments that had them both laughing. Later, after Lily had fallen asleep on the sofa wrapped in her favorite blanket, Ethan and Sarah sat at the kitchen table with mugs of tea, their conversation flowing easily in the comfortable silence of evening. "Can I ask you something personal?" Ethan ventured. Sarah nodded, wrapping her hands around her mug. "Sure. Lily's father. Is he in the picture at all? Sarah's expression closed slightly, but she answered honestly. No. He was a professor at the university where I was studying. Older, established, charming. When I told him I was pregnant, he made it very clear he wasn't interested in fatherhood. She took a sip of tea before continuing. My parents are deeply religious. They gave me an ultimatum. Give up the baby or leave. I chose Lily. You've done an amazing job with her, Ethan said softly. It hasn't been easy, Sarah admitted. But I've never regretted it. Not for a single moment. She's everything to me. She paused, studying him. What about you? The billionaire CEO who spends his weekends fixing my leaky faucets instead of sailing on a yacht somewhere. What's your story? Ethan laughed. Hardly a billionaire, but the rest is mostly accurate. He hesitated, then decided on honesty. My parents had my life planned from birth. Prep school, Harvard Business School, then joining my father at Blake Financial. When I started my own tech company instead, they saw it as betrayal rather than initiative. But you've been incredibly successful, Sarah pointed out. By most standards, yes, but not by theirs. To my father, technology is a fad. Real wealth, real power is in banking, in the connections his family has built over generations. Ethan shook his head. No matter what I achieve, it's never enough because it's not what they wanted. Sarah reached across the table, briefly touching his hand. Their loss, she said simply. That light touch sent warmth through Ethan's entire body. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her, taking in the gentle curve of her cheek, the determined set of her chin, the quiet strength in her eyes. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with expensive clothes or professional makeup. What? She asked, noticing his gaze. Nothing, he said quickly. Just thank you for sharing your birthday dinner with me that day, for letting me be part of this. He gestured around the apartment, at the drawings on the refrigerator, at Lily sleeping peacefully nearby. Sarah's smile was worth more than any business deal he'd ever closed. Thank you for staying, she replied softly. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Ethan found himself leaning forward slightly, drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, her breath catching. The spell was broken by Lily stirring on the sofa, mumbling in her sleep. Sarah immediately stood up, going to adjust her daughter's blanket with tender care. I should go, Ethan said, rising from his chair. It's getting late. Sarah nodded, walking him to the door. Will we see you tomorrow? She asked, her voice casual, but her eyes hopeful. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, he promised. As he walked to his car, Ethan realized he hadn't checked his work email all evening, something that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. More surprisingly, he didn't care. For the first time in his adult life, the world outside of work seemed vibrant and full of possibility. Back in his penthouse, surrounded by expensive furniture and panoramic views, Ethan felt oddly out of place. He moved to his home office, where he'd placed Lily's drawings in frames alongside his business awards. The contrast was striking, gold-plated recognition of professional achievements beside crayon masterpieces celebrating simple joy. His phone buzzed with a message from Victor. Emergency meeting tomorrow, 7 a.m. Board members concerned about Q2 projections. Be prepared. Ethan sighed, the real world intruding on his thoughts. He typed a quick confirmation, then hesitated before sending another message. This one to Sarah. Thank you for tonight. Dinner tomorrow? I promise to let you handle the sauce this time. Her reply came quickly. Deal. Lily says Mr. Ethan better bring ice cream. Smiling, Ethan set his phone aside and moved to the window. The city lights sparkled below, millions of lives unfolding in countless apartments across New York. For years, he'd looked down on that view feeling separate, above it all. Now, for the first time, he felt connected to those lights, to the people behind them, to two people in particular, in a small apartment that somehow felt more like home than anywhere he'd ever been. The Pinnacle Innovations boardroom fell silent as Ethan finished his presentation. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the tense faces around the polished mahogany table. He straightened his tie, waiting for the inevitable pushback. "Your projections seem optimistic," Victor Reynolds said, leaning forward with calculated precision. At 45, Victor was everything Ethan's parents wished he would be: polished, ruthlessly ambitious, and entirely focused on the bottom line. "Especially considering your recent distractions." Ethan kept his expression neutral. "The projections are based on solid data, Victor. Our new software platform is exceeding performance expectations, and initial client feedback has been overwhelmingly positive." "That's not what I meant," Victor replied, his smile not reaching his cold blue eyes. "I'm talking about your newfound work-life balance. 3 months ago, you lived and breathed Pinnacle. Now you're rushing out the door at 5 and declining weekend strategy sessions." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Ethan felt heat rising in his face but maintained his composure. "My personal schedule has no bearing on company performance, which remains exceptional." "For now," Victor countered, "but the Carson acquisition requires full attention. We can't afford sentimentality or distractions." He looked pointedly around the table. "The board deserves a CEO who puts Pinnacle first." The implication hung heavy in the air, a threat Ethan couldn't ignore. Victor had been his first investor, helping launch Pinnacle from a garage startup to a market leader. They'd been friends once, before success had revealed Victor's true nature. Now, with his 30% stake in the company, Victor wielded significant influence with the board. "I appreciate your concern," Ethan replied evenly, "but the numbers speak for themselves. Pinnacle is thriving under my leadership, regardless of whether I work 16 hours a day or maintain reasonable boundaries." The meeting eventually adjourned with tentative approval for Ethan's strategy, but Victor's warning lingered. As the boardroom emptied, his business partner approached, voice low. "You're a brilliant founder, Ethan, but you're throwing it all away for what? Playing daddy to some preschooler and her struggling mother?" Ethan's hands clenched involuntarily. "Don't talk about them like that." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Hit a nerve, did I? Look, I don't care who you spend your time with, but when it affects Pinnacle, it becomes my business." He straightened his custom suit jacket. "The board respects you, but they'll choose company interests over sentiment every time. Just remember what you've built here before you throw it away for some ready-made family that sees you as a meal ticket." After Victor left, Ethan remained in the boardroom, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. He'd built Pinnacle from nothing, pouring every ounce of his energy and intelligence into creating something meaningful. The company employed hundreds of people, developed technologies that improved lives. He was proud of what he'd accomplished. But lately, those achievements felt hollow compared to the simple joy of reading bedtime stories to Lily or sharing quiet conversations with Sarah after the little girl had fallen asleep. His phone chimed with a message from Sarah. "Lily's school called. She has a fever. Taking her to the doctor. Don't worry, probably just a cold." Without hesitation, Ethan texted back, "Which doctor? I'll meet you there." 30 minutes later, he walked into a pediatric clinic in Sarah's neighborhood, so different from the sleek private medical offices his family used. The waiting room was bright and cheerful, despite being crowded with worried parents and sick children. He spotted Sarah immediately, Lily curled against her chest, unusually subdued. "You didn't have to come," Sarah said as he sat beside them, though her relieved expression suggested otherwise. "Of course I did." Ethan gently touched Lily's forehead, alarmed by the heat radiating from her skin. "How high is her fever?" "Mon 2-3, Sarah replied, her voice tight with worry. "The nurse said the doctor will see us soon." Ethan nodded, noticing how Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she stroked her daughter's hair. "Have you eaten anything today?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "I was rushing to a job interview when the school called." Without comment, Ethan went to the vending machine in the corner, returning with water and snacks. As Sarah ate a granola bar, he held Lily, who dozed fitfully against his shoulder. The weight of her small body, the implicit trust in the way she relaxed against him, stirred emotions he couldn't quite name. "Mr. Ethan," Lily murmured, her voice hoarse, "will you tell me the princess story?" He smiled, recalling the improvised fairy tale he'd created one evening when bedtime had been a battle. "Once upon a time," he began softly, "there was a brave princess named Lily who lived in a magical kingdom." By the time the doctor called them in, Lily had fallen asleep in his arms. The pediatrician, a kind-faced woman with salt and pepper hair, diagnosed a common viral infection, prescribing rest, fluids, and children's fever reducer. "You have a beautiful family," she commented as she wrote out care instructions. Neither Ethan nor Sarah corrected her assumption. Later that afternoon, in Sarah's apartment, Ethan set up a makeshift office at the kitchen table, while Sarah tended to Lily in the bedroom. His laptop open to quarterly reports, he fielded urgent calls and emails while periodically checking on them. When Sarah emerged, exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath her eyes, he closed his computer without hesitation. "She's finally sleeping," Sarah whispered, collapsing onto the sofa beside him. "Thank you for being here today. I don't know what I would have done without you." "You would have managed," Ethan said, admiring her resilience. "You always do." "Maybe," she conceded, leaning her head against the cushions, "but it's nice not having to do everything alone for once." Impulsively, Ethan reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. Sarah turned to face him, vulnerability and something deeper shining in her eyes. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Then, with gentle inevitability, Ethan leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss that began tentatively but quickly deepened, years of loneliness dissolving in the connection. When they finally separated, Sarah's cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright despite her exhaustion. "That was long overdue," Ethan finished, smiling. She laughed softly, then grew serious. "Ethan, I need you to be sure. This isn't just about me. Lily adores you. If this is just temporary for you—" "It's not," he interrupted, his voice firm with conviction. "Sarah, these past months with you and Lily have been the happiest of my life. I've never been more certain of anything." She studied his face, searching for doubt and finding none. "Your world is so different from ours. Your family, your business." "None of that matters," Ethan insisted. "This, you and Lily, this is real. Everything else is just details." Later that evening, after making soup for dinner and ensuring Lily took her medicine, Ethan reluctantly prepared to leave. "I have an early meeting tomorrow, but I'll check in first thing," he promised. At the door, Sarah stopped him with a hand on his arm. "There's something you should know," she said, her expression serious. "I got the job at Madison Elementary. It doesn't pay much, but it's stable and includes health insurance for Lily." "That's wonderful," Ethan said sincerely, recognizing how important her independence was to her. "I start next week," she hesitated. "I want to be clear about something. What happened between us today? It wasn't because I needed your help or because I'm grateful. It was because—" She took a deep breath. "Because I'm falling in love with you, Ethan, and that terrifies me." Her honesty left him momentarily speechless. In the corporate world, people hid their true feelings behind strategic language and calculated moves. Sarah's straightforward vulnerability was both refreshing and humbling. "I'm falling in love with you too," he admitted, the words surprisingly easy to say. "And yes, it's terrifying, but it's also the most real thing I've ever felt." Their second kiss held promise and possibility, the beginning of something neither had expected, but both now embraced. As Ethan drove back to his penthouse through the nighttime city, his phone rang with Victor's number displayed on the dashboard screen. He hesitated only briefly before declining the call. Whatever business crisis had emerged could wait until morning. For the first time in his career, Ethan was putting someone, ahead of pinnacle innovations. The realization should have troubled him, but instead it felt like freedom. In his penthouse, instead of returning to work as he normally would, Ethan found himself standing before the wall of windows, gazing at the city lights below. Somewhere out there, in a modest apartment, were the two people who had somehow become the center of his world. His phone chimed with a text from Sarah. "Lily's fever is down. She asked me to tell Mr. Ethan good night and that you make better soup than Mommy. She's not wrong." Smiling, Ethan replied, "Tell Princess Lily I'll see her tomorrow. Sweet dreams to both of you." As he prepared for bed, Ethan realized he hadn't felt this content, this purposeful in years. The challenges ahead, Victor's opposition, his parents' inevitable disapproval, the complications of blending his life with Sarah and Lily's seemed manageable when weighed against what he stood to gain. For the first time since childhood, Ethan Blake was following his heart rather than others' expectations. Whatever storms lay ahead, he would weather them gladly for the family he had unexpectedly found. Summer arrived in a wave of heat that transformed New York City into a shimmering mirage of concrete and glass. 3 months had passed since Ethan and Sarah's first kiss, months filled with movie nights, weekend outings, and increasingly confident displays of affection that made Lily giggle with delight. Today marked a milestone that had Ethan's stomach tied in knots as he stood in Sarah's small kitchen, helping prepare a special dinner. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" he asked, chopping vegetables with more precision than necessary. Sarah looked up from the chicken she was seasoning, her expression softening. "My parents need to meet you eventually, Ethan. They're still my family, despite everything." Since reconnecting 6 months ago, Sarah's relationship with her parents had been tentative at best. The Hendersons had reached out after seeing Sarah and Lily at their church's Easter service, offering a carefully worded olive branch. While they hadn't fully accepted Sarah's choices, they were making efforts to be part of Lily's life. "I know," Ethan conceded. "I just don't want them to make you uncomfortable in your own home." Sarah crossed the kitchen to kiss him lightly. "Having you here makes me brave," she said simply, returning to her task. Watching her work, confident, focused, beautiful in a simple sundress, Ethan felt the now familiar surge of emotion that still caught him by surprise. How had this woman and her daughter so completely transformed his life in less than a year? The knock at the door came precisely at 6. Ethan straightened his casual button-down shirt as Sarah went to greet her parents. Lily, excited about the visit, bounded ahead of her mother. Robert and Eleanor Henderson stepped into the apartment with the careful politeness of diplomats entering foreign territory. Robert was tall and stern-faced, with silver-streaked dark hair, while Eleanor's blonde hair and facial features revealed where Sarah had inherited her beauty. Both were impeccably dressed in clothes that, while not ostentatious, spoke of comfortable wealth. "Grandma! Grandpa!" Lily exclaimed, receiving polite hugs from both. "Come meet Mr. Ethan. He's Mommy's special friend, and he makes pancakes shaped like animals." Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly at this description. "Special friend?" Sarah took a steadying breath. "Mom, Dad, this is Ethan Blake. Ethan, my parents, Robert and Eleanor Henderson." Ethan stepped forward, offering his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you both. Sarah has told me so much about you." Robert's handshake was firm to the point of discomfort. "Blake," he repeated, recognition flickering in his eyes. "Not of Blake Financial?" "My family," Ethan confirmed, "though I run my own company, Pinnacle Innovations." This information visibly changed the atmosphere. The Hendersons exchanged glances laden with meaning. "The technology firm," Robert said, his tone warming slightly. "I've read about your work in the journal. Impressive growth." "Thank you," Ethan replied, noting how quickly his professional credentials had altered their perception. The familiar pattern both amused and irritated him. Throughout dinner, the conversation remained politely strained. The Hendersons directed most of their questions to Ethan about his business and family connections, while largely avoiding direct interaction with Sarah beyond necessary courtesies. Lily, oblivious to the undercurrents, happily dominated the conversation with stories about preschool and her upcoming dance recital. "So how did you two meet?" Eleanor finally asked, delicately cutting her chicken. Sarah and Ethan exchanged glances, smiling at the memory. "I kidnapped him for my birthday," Lily announced proudly before either could answer. "She didn't exactly kidnap me," Ethan clarified, laughing at the Hendersons' alarmed expressions. "I was alone on my birthday, and Lily invited me to dinner. Best invitation I've ever accepted." "And how long has this been going on?" Robert asked, his gaze moving between them. "Almost 6 months," Sarah answered, her chin lifting slightly in the subtle defiance Ethan had come to recognize whenever she felt judged. "I see." Eleanor dabbed her lips with a napkin. "And your intentions, Mr. Blake?" "Mom," Sarah protested. "It's a fair question," Robert interjected, "given the circumstances." "What circumstances would those be exactly?" Ethan asked mildly, though he felt Sarah tense beside him. "Well?" Eleanor hesitated, glancing at Lily, who was happily focused on her mashed potatoes. "Sarah's situation is complicated. A child, limited income, her education interrupted. It's important to understand where such a relationship might be heading." The implication was clear. What could someone of Ethan's standing possibly want with their daughter beyond the obvious? "My intentions," Ethan said carefully, "are to be with the woman I love and the child I've come to care for deeply. The rest is for Sarah and me to determine together." Sarah's hand found his under the table, squeezing gratefully. Robert studied him for a long moment. "You say that now, but we've seen how these things go. When the novelty wears off—" "Dad, stop," Sarah interrupted, her voice quiet but firm. "Ethan isn't a phase or a charity case. He's the man I love, the man who shows up, who cares about us, who puts us first. That's more than—" She stopped herself, but the unspoken comparison hung in the air. An uncomfortable silence fell, broken only by Lily asking if she could be excused to show her grandparents her new art project. As the little girl led her grandparents to the living room, Sarah remained at the table, her expression troubled. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Ethan. "I knew they'd be difficult, but I didn't expect the interrogation." "Hey," he said gently, turning her face toward his. "Nothing they say changes anything between us. We know what we have." Sarah nodded, though worry still clouded her eyes. "They'll never see me as anything but their disappointing daughter who threw away her future. Then they're missing out. Fond knowing the extraordinary woman you've become," Ethan said firmly. The evening eventually concluded with polite goodbyes and the Hendersons' promise to attend Lily's upcoming dance recital. When the door closed behind them, Sarah exhaled heavily, leaning against it. "That wasn't so bad, was it?" Ethan teased, pulling her into his arms. "Compared to what? A root canal?" But she was smiling as she rested her head against his chest. Later, after Lily was tucked in bed with her favorite stuffed unicorn, Ethan and Sarah sat on the small balcony outside the apartment, sharing a bottle of wine. The summer night was warm, the city lights creating their own constellation against the dark sky. "I've been thinking," Ethan said, breaking a comfortable silence. "This apartment is getting crowded with the three of us here so often." Sarah looked at him quizzically. "What are you suggesting?" "Move in with me," he said simply. "Or we could find a new place together, whatever you're comfortable with. I just want us to be together properly, not just whenever we can manage it." Sarah's expression grew serious. "Ethan, I love you, but I can't just... Your penthouse isn't exactly child-friendly, and I can't rely on you financially. I need my independence." "I respect that," he assured her. "But this isn't about money, Sarah. It's about making a life together." He took her hand. "We could find somewhere that works. For all of us, a real home." "You'd give up your penthouse?" she asked skeptically. "With its amazing view and private elevator and all that luxury?" "In a heartbeat," he replied without hesitation. "None of that matters compared to waking up with you and Lily every day." Sarah studied him in the dim light, her expression softening. "Let me think about it. It's a big step, especially for Lily." "Of course," Ethan agreed, though disappointment tugged at him. "No pressure." They fell silent again, contemplating the future. Ethan knew Sarah's hesitation wasn't about her feelings for him, but her deep-rooted fear of dependence. Her ex had abandoned her when she needed him most, and her parents had chosen principles over their daughter. Sarah's hard-won self-sufficiency wasn't something she would or should relinquish easily. "My parents are hosting their annual summer gala next weekend," Ethan said suddenly. "I'd like you and Lily to come with me." Sarah's eyes widened. "To meet your parents, the banking dynasty Blakes." "They're not royalty," Ethan laughed, though he understood her apprehension. Just people. Difficult, judgmental people, but still, just people. That's not exactly reassuring, Sarah said dryly. They'll love you, Ethan insisted, though he knew it wasn't true. His parents would likely be as disapproving as Sarah's, though for entirely different reasons. But he was tired of compartmentalizing his life. The corporate CEO, the dutiful son, and now the man in love with a single mother from a world entirely different from his own. Will they? Sarah asked softly. A college dropout who works as a teacher's aide and has a child with a man she wasn't married to? I'm hardly the society daughter-in-law they've probably imagined for you. I don't care what they imagine, Ethan said firmly. You and Lily are my family now. It's time everyone understood that. Sarah leaned over to kiss him, a tender gesture that conveyed both love and lingering uncertainty. I love you for saying that, but let's be realistic about what we're walking into. Ethan nodded, understanding her concerns. The worlds they came from were vastly different, with expectations and judgments that couldn't be easily dismissed. But in the quiet moments like these, with the woman he loved beside him and her daughter sleeping peacefully inside, those differences seemed insignificant compared to what they'd found together. Whatever happens, he promised, we face it together. Sarah smiled, resting her head on his shoulder as they gazed out at the city lights. Together, she echoed, the single word carrying both promise and determination. The Blake estate in the Hamptons loomed like a monument to old money and privilege, its white columns and manicured gardens projecting an aura of untouchable elegance. Ethan felt Sarah tense beside him as their car approached the circular driveway already lined with luxury vehicles. We don't have to do this, he said quietly, squeezing her hand. In the back seat, Lily was fast asleep, the long drive having lulled her into dreams. Sarah smoothed the skirt of her simple blue dress, the nicest she owned, yet still hopelessly informal compared to what awaited inside. Yes, we do, she replied, with determination. I want to know all of you, Ethan. That includes this part of your life. The chauffeur opened their door, and Ethan helped Sarah out while carefully lifting the sleeping Lily. The little girl stirred, blinking drowsily at the enormous house before them. Is this a castle? She whispered, her eyes wide. Ethan smiled. Something like that. Ready to meet some new people. Lily nodded, solemnly, clutching her stuffed unicorn tighter as they approached the entrance, where a uniformed staff member greeted them with practiced deference. Mr. Blake, your parents are in the main salon with the early guests. The foyer alone was larger than Sarah's entire apartment, with marble floors and a sweeping staircase that belonged in a period film. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across artwork that Sarah recognized from museum catalogues. She drew a steadying breath. Suddenly, acutely aware of the worlds that separated her from the Blakes. They found William and Margaret Blake holding court among a select group of what Ethan quietly identified as the inner circle. Old family friends, business associates, and relatives with sufficient social standing to warrant pre-gala access. Margaret Blake spotted them first, her practiced smile faltering momentarily as she registered Sarah and Lily. Tall and slender, with perfectly styled silver hair and the kind of bone structure that defied aging, Margaret approached with the graceful confidence of someone who had never questioned her place in the world. Ethan, darling, you're finally here. She air-kissed both his cheeks before turning her appraising gaze to Sarah. And you've brought guests. Mother, this is Sarah Collins and her daughter Lily. Ethan's voice carried a warning note. Sarah, my mother, Margaret Blake. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Blake, Sarah said with genuine politeness, extending her hand. Margaret accepted the handshake with cool propriety. How unexpected. Ethan rarely brings friends to family functions. Sarah isn't just a friend, Mother, Ethan said firmly. She's an important part of my life, as is Lily. Before Margaret could respond, William Blake joined them, his imposing presence commanding attention despite his advancing years. Tall like his son, with the same strong jawline now softened by age, William assessed the newcomers with shrewd eyes that had evaluated countless business deals. "So this is why you've been unavailable for Sunday dinners," he remarked, his tone neutral as he shook Sarah's hand. "William Blake, Sarah Collins, thank you for having us in your beautiful home." William nodded, then unexpectedly crouched to Lily's level. "And who might you be, young lady?" Lily, usually outgoing, suddenly turned shy, partially hiding behind Sarah's legs. "I'm Lily," she whispered. "I'm 4. 4 is an excellent age," William said seriously. "I have something 4-year-olds particularly enjoy. Would you like to see?" After a reassuring nod from Sarah, Lily cautiously followed William to a side table where he showed her an intricate music box. As the tiny ballerina inside began to spin, Lily's face lit up with wonder. Margaret watched this interaction with a complicated expression before turning back to Ethan. "We should discuss this. Development privately, dear. Perhaps your friends would enjoy refreshments while we chat." "There's nothing to discuss, Mother," Ethan replied evenly. "Sarah and Lily are with me. They're staying." A tense silence followed, broken by the arrival of more guests. Margaret's social training prevailed, and she smoothly turned to greet the newcomers, though the tight line of her mouth betrayed her displeasure. As the gala officially began, Sarah found herself separated from Ethan, who was pulled into conversation with important business contacts. She stood awkwardly at the periphery of various social circles, clutching a champagne glass and trying to appear comfortable as curious glances were cast her way. "You must be Sarah," a voice said beside her. She turned to find a tall, distinguished man with calculating eyes. "Victor Reynolds, Ethan's business partner." "Yes, hello," Sarah replied, relieved to meet someone who at least knew her name. "It's nice to meet you." "Likewise." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You've certainly had quite an effect on our CEO. He's practically a different person these days." Something in his tone put Sarah on alert. "Different how?" "Oh, more balanced, I suppose one could say. Though in business, balance isn't always a virtue." He sipped his drink. "Pinnacle is at a critical juncture. The Carson acquisition could double our market value, but it requires absolute focus and commitment." "Ethan is extremely committed to his company," Sarah said carefully. Victor studied her for a moment. "Yes, he was, before you." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Let me be direct, Ms. Collins. Ethan built something extraordinary, something that impacts thousands of lives. Whatever you think you're doing with him, playing house, securing a comfortable future for your daughter, ask yourself if it's worth destroying what he's created." Sarah felt heat rising in her cheeks. "You don't know anything about my relationship with Ethan. I know he's missed crucial meetings to attend a child's dance recital. I know he's turned down international opportunities because they would take him away from weekend pancake breakfasts." Victor's expression hardened. "I know the board is questioning his commitment, and I know his parents are devastated by his apparent determination to throw away everything they've built for generations." Before Sarah could respond, Lily came running up, her earlier shyness forgotten. "Mommy, Mr. William showed me where they keep the cookies. Can I have one, please?" Sarah forced a smile, grateful for the interruption. "Just one, sweetie. It's almost dinner time." As Lily skipped away toward the refreshment table where William Blake surprisingly waited, Victor watched with calculated interest. "Charming child. Father not in the picture, I understand." "That's not your business," Sarah replied coldly. "Perhaps not," Victor conceded, "but Ethan's future is very much my business. Think about what I've said, Ms. Collins. If you truly care for him, you'll consider whether you're helping him become his best self or pulling him away from everything he's worked for." With that, he melted back into the crowd, leaving Sarah shaken. Across the room, she caught sight of Ethan deep in conversation with several serious-looking men. He looked so at home in this world of wealth and power, his confident gestures and easy authority marking him as someone born to lead. What if Victor was right? Was she pulling Ethan away from his destiny? The doubts that had plagued her since the beginning of their relationship surged back with renewed force. Later, during dinner, Sarah found herself seated between a Wall Street executive and a museum board chairwoman. both of whom made polite but minimal conversation once they established she was in education at an elementary school. Ethan was placed at another table with business associates, while Lily had been whisked away to a separate children's dining area supervised by staff. As the elaborate meal progressed, Sarah overheard snippets of conversation around her, references to summer homes in Europe, private planes, and exclusive schools. This world operated with rules and expectations entirely foreign to her experience. After dinner, she finally found a moment alone with Ethan on the terrace overlooking illuminated gardens. "Your mother certainly knows how to throw a party," she said, aiming for lightness despite her turmoil. Ethan looked apologetic. "I'm sorry we've barely had a chance to talk. These things are more business than pleasure." "I met your partner, Victor." Something darkened in Ethan's expression. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing that wasn't true," Sarah replied carefully. "He's worried about Pinnacle, about your focus." "Victor is worried about Victor," Ethan said flatly. "He's been pushing for more control since day one." Sarah hesitated, then asked the question that had been haunting her all evening. "Am I holding you back, Ethan, from the life you're meant to have?" "What?" He looked genuinely surprised. "Sarah, no. You and Lily are the best things that have ever happened to me. But all this," she gestured at the opulent surroundings, "this is your world. I saw you in there talking business, making connections. You're brilliant at it, and I'm just a teacher's aide with a community college education." Ethan took her hands firmly in his. "Listen to me, that world in there, it's empty. I spent 34 years trying to find meaning in business deals and social status. Then I met you and Lily, and for the first time, I understood what actually matters." "I don't want you to regret us," Sarah whispered, voicing her deepest fear, "or resent us someday for taking you away from all this." "Sarah Collins," Ethan said, his voice tender but resolute. "I could lose Pinnacle tomorrow and still be the happiest man alive if I had you and Lily. This," he gestured toward the house, "this isn't my world anymore. You are." The conviction in his voice nearly brought tears to her eyes. Before she could respond, they were interrupted by Margaret Blake, who appeared in the terrace doorway. "There you are, Ethan. The Montgomerys are asking about you. Caroline looks lovely tonight." The emphasis on the name was unmistakable. Caroline Montgomery, daughter of a banking family with connections to match the Blakes, had long been Margaret's preferred match for her son. "Please tell them I'll catch up later, Mother," Ethan replied evenly. "I'm having an important conversation with Sarah." Margaret's gaze swept over Sarah dismissively. "Yes, well, family obligations should take precedence over diversions." With that parting shot, she returned to her guests. "That's how she sees me," Sarah said quietly. "A diversion, a phase you're going through." "My mother sees what she wants to see," Ethan countered. "She always has." Sarah was about to respond when Lily appeared, being gently guided by William Blake. The little girl looked tired but happy, clutching a delicate porcelain figurine of a ballerina. "Mr. William gave me a present," she announced proudly. "It's just like the dancing lady in the music box." William cleared his throat awkwardly. It was gathering dust in a cabinet. Seemed like it would be appreciated more by someone who recognizes its magic. His eyes met Sarah's briefly. "She's a remarkable child. Very observant." "Thank you," Sarah replied, surprised by this unexpected kindness. William nodded curtly, then turned to his son. "Your mother's looking for you." "I know," Ethan said wryly. "The Montgomerys await." Something passed between father and son, an unspoken communication laden with years of expectations and disappointments. Then William surprised them again. "I'll tell her you're occupied with family matters," he said quietly before walking away. As Lily yawned widely, Ethan lifted her into his arms. "I think it's time we headed home," he said, looking at Sarah with a question in his eyes. She nodded, understanding the significance of his words. Home. Not the Blake estate, not his penthouse, but wherever they were together. As they walked toward the exit, Sarah glanced back at the glittering party continuing without them. Victor Reynolds watched from across the room, his expression calculating. Margaret Blake stood rigid beside her husband, disapproval evident in every line of her body. But it was William Blake who caught Sarah's attention. The slight nod he gave her, almost imperceptible, yet somehow conveying a grudging respect. In that moment, Sarah realized the evening hadn't been a complete disaster after all. Small victories sometimes came from unexpected quarters. In the car, with Lily once again asleep in the back seat, Ethan reached for Sarah's hand. "I'm sorry about tonight, about my mother, about Victor." "Don't be," Sarah replied, a new certainty settling in her heart. "I needed to see that world to understand what you're choosing, what we're choosing." "And?" Ethan asked, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. Sarah squeezed his hand, her decision made. "Ask me again about moving in together. My answer might have changed." Autumn painted Central Park in fiery hues as Ethan and Sarah walked hand in hand along paths strewn with fallen leaves. Ahead of them, Lily skipped joyfully, her red coat a bright splash against the golden landscape. "Do you think she'll like it?" Ethan asked, unable to keep the nervous edge from his voice. Sarah smiled, squeezing his hand. "The apartment? She's going to love it, especially that bedroom you designed for her." After months of searching, they'd found a spacious brownstone apartment in Brooklyn Heights, not as luxurious as Ethan's penthouse, but far more comfortable than Sarah's cramped quarters. With high ceilings, large windows that welcomed natural light, and a small garden, it perfectly balanced their different worlds. They were scheduled to move in the following week. "I'm not just talking about the apartment," Ethan said quietly, stopping to face Sarah. His hand instinctively touched the small velvet box in his pocket. "I mean everything. Us becoming a family officially." Sarah's expression softened. "Ethan, you've been more of a father to Lily in 1 year than her biological father has been her entire life. She already thinks of you as family." "And you?" he asked, studying her face. "What do you think?" Before Sarah could answer, Lily came running back, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Can we go to the pond? Please? I want to see the ducks before they fly away for winter." "Of course, princess," Ethan replied, the endearment now second nature. He lifted her onto his shoulders, her delighted giggles momentarily postponing his planned proposal. At the pond, they fed the remaining ducks with seed purchased from a nearby vendor. Ethan watched Sarah showing Lily how to toss the seeds gently, the autumn sunlight highlighting the gold in their matching hair. The sight filled him with such overwhelming love that he almost reached for the ring then and there. But the moment was interrupted by his phone buzzing insistently. Checking the screen, Ethan frowned. "It's Victor, third time today. I should probably take this." Sarah nodded understandingly. "We'll wait here." Stepping away, Ethan answered with barely concealed irritation. "This better be important, Victor. It's Saturday." "The Carson deal is falling apart." Victor's voice was clipped. "Their CEO is having second thoughts about the terms. They want to meet today to renegotiate." "That's impossible. I'm with Sarah and Lily." "This is a $200 million acquisition, Ethan. Your little weekend playdates can wait." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Don't ever refer to my family that way again." There was a pause before Victor continued, his tone modulated. "Look, I understand you're serious about them, but this deal represents years of work. If it collapses because you couldn't make one emergency meeting, how will you feel? How will the board react?" The manipulation was obvious, but the stakes were undeniably high. The Carson acquisition would transform Pinnacle, potentially doubling their market share and securing their position as an industry leader. "Where's the meeting?" Ethan asked finally. "Private dining room at the pier, 4 o'clock. Their entire executive team will be there." Ethan checked his watch. 2:30. "Fine, I'll be there. But I'm bringing the contract attorneys, and this better not be another one of your false alarms." Ending the call, he returned to Sarah and Lily, the weight of his decision already settling uncomfortably on his shoulders. "Problem?" Sarah asked, recognizing his expression. "The Carson deal is in trouble. I need to go to an emergency meeting." The words tasted bitter. "I'm sorry, I know we had plans for the evening." Sarah's disappointment was visible but quickly masked. "It's okay. We understand, don't we, Lily?" Lily's lower lip trembled slightly. "But you promised we'd have spaghetti at the restaurant with the singing waiters." Ethan crouched to her level. "I know, Princess, and I'm really sorry. But this is a very important meeting that I can't miss. I promise we'll go next weekend. Okay?" "You always have important meetings," Lily said, her voice small but accusatory. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. "Lily," Sarah admonished gently, "that's not fair. Ethan spends lots of time with us." But the damage was done. As they walked back through the park, Lily's earlier exuberance had vanished, replaced by a subdued silence that felt like indictment. "I'll make it up to both of you," Ethan promised as they reached the street, where a cab waited to take them home, and another would take him to the pier. Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We'll be fine. Good luck with your meeting." Their goodbye kiss was brief, perfunctory. As his taxi pulled away, Ethan watched them through the rear window, Sarah holding Lily's hand, the little girl's shoulders slumped in disappointment. The velvet box sat heavily in his pocket, his planned proposal now postponed indefinitely. The meeting at the pier stretched into evening, then night. Carson's executives were indeed wavering, concerned about integration challenges and potential culture clashes. What should have been a straightforward renegotiation became a marathon session of persuasion, compromise, and strategic realignment. By the time signatures were finally exchanged on revised terms, it was nearly midnight. Ethan was exhausted but satisfied. The deal would proceed, albeit with concessions that would require board approval. "We did it," Victor said, clapping him on the shoulder as they left the hotel. "This is what makes Pinnacle great, Ethan. This commitment to excellence, no matter the personal cost." Ethan merely nodded, too tired to argue but increasingly certain that Victor's definition of greatness differed fundamentally from his own. When he finally arrived at Sarah's apartment, it was dark and quiet. Using his key, he entered silently, not wanting to wake them. A plate of spaghetti sat covered on the kitchen counter, with a note in Sarah's handwriting. "In case you're hungry when you get home, we missed you." The simple gesture of thoughtfulness made his chest ache. He moved quietly to Lily's room, finding her fast asleep clutching the ballerina figurine William Blake had given her. Gently, he adjusted her blanket before moving to Sarah's bedroom. Sarah wasn't asleep. She sat propped against pillows, reading by the light of a small lamp. She looked up as he entered, her expression unreadable. "Hey," he said softly. "Deal saved? For now." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly unsure of his welcome. "I'm sorry about today." Sarah set her book aside. "It's not the first time, Ethan, and it won't be the last. That's the reality of who you are." "What does that mean?" "It means you're Ethan Blake, CEO of Pinnacle Innovations. Important meetings and emergencies are part of your life." Her tone wasn't accusatory, merely factual. "We knew that going in." "I wanted today to be special," Ethan admitted, pulling the velvet box from his pocket and setting it on the nightstand. "This wasn't how I planned to do this." Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the box. "Ethan, I'm not asking now," he said quickly. "Not like this, not after disappointing you both. But I want you to know my intentions haven't changed. I love you and Lily more than anything. More than Pinnacle, more than deals or acquisitions or anything else in my former life." "Former life?" Sarah repeated. "Ethan, that's still your life. Today proved it." "One meeting." "It's not about one meeting," Sarah interrupted gently. "It's about the fact that when Victor calls, you go. When the company needs you, everything else waits. And that's who you are. I don't want to change that about you." "What are you saying?" Ethan felt a chill of apprehension. Sarah reached for his hand. "I'm saying I love you exactly as you are, but I need to be sure we're going into this with open eyes. Your world will always include emergencies and last-minute meetings. There will always be another Carson deal. And you think I'll always choose Pinnacle?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. "I think you'll always try to choose us," Sarah replied carefully. "But I also think your company needs you. Hundreds of employees depend on you. That responsibility doesn't just disappear because you fall in love. Ethan felt simultaneously grateful for her understanding and frustrated by her acceptance of a conflict he was determined to resolve. "I can balance both. I will balance both." "I believe you'll try," Sarah said, kissing him softly. "That's enough for tonight. Come to bed. You look exhausted." Later, lying in the darkness with Sarah's steady breathing beside him, Ethan stared at the ceiling, turning their conversation over in his mind. The engagement ring remained in its box on the nightstand, waiting for a better moment. A perfect moment that seemed increasingly elusive. His phone vibrated with a message. "Victor, board meeting moved to 7 a.m. tomorrow. Need to brief them on Carson changes before markets open." Ethan turned the phone face down without replying. Tomorrow would be soon enough to deal with Pinnacle's demands. Tonight, despite his failures, he was exactly where he needed to be. Morning arrived too quickly, sunlight filtering through curtains as Ethan carefully extricated himself from Sarah's embrace. He dressed quietly, wrote a note explaining his early departure, and stopped to kiss Lily's forehead before leaving. The domestic ritual felt both precious and precarious, as though he were balancing on a high wire between two worlds. The board meeting was contentious, as expected. The concessions made to Carson didn't sit well with several members, particularly the reduced earnout structure and extended integration timeline. "These terms significantly impact our projected returns," one board member objected. "Why were these compromises necessary?" "Because without them there would be no deal," Ethan explained patiently, "and a reduced return is better than no return at all." "Perhaps if you'd been more involved in the preliminary negotiations," another suggested, "these last-minute concessions wouldn't have been necessary." Victor sat silently, his expression neutral, but Ethan could read the satisfaction in his eyes. The seeds of doubt had been planted. When the meeting finally adjourned with reluctant approval of the revised terms, Victor approached Ethan in the corridor. "Tough crowd today." "Nothing unexpected," Ethan replied coolly. "They're questioning your commitment, Ethan. I defended you, of course, but the concerns are valid." Victor's tone was sympathetic, his eyes calculating. "This division of focus, it's not sustainable." "I appreciate your concern," Ethan said, not bothering to hide his sarcasm. "But my personal life is not up for board discussion." "It is when it affects company performance," Victor countered. "Look, I'm not your enemy here. I'm trying to protect what we built together. This Carson deal is just the beginning. If we're going to grow as planned, Pinnacle needs your full attention." "And if I can't provide that?" Victor's expression hardened. "Then perhaps it's time to consider a different arrangement. One that better serves the company's interests." The threat was thinly veiled. Step back or be pushed aside. As Victor walked away, Ethan remained in the corridor, a decision crystallizing in his mind. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "James, it's Ethan Blake. I need to speak with you about accelerating our contingency plan." "Yes, immediately." That evening, Ethan returned to Sarah's apartment earlier than usual, carrying takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant and a small gift bag for Lily. He found them in the living room, Sarah helping Lily pack her favorite toys for the upcoming move. "You're home early," Sarah remarked, surprised but pleased. "I had some important things to take care of," Ethan replied, setting down the food. "And I wanted to make up for yesterday." Lily approached cautiously, still slightly wounded from the previous day's disappointment. "What's in the bag?" "Something special for the bravest, smartest princess I know," Ethan said, kneeling to her. "Level. A token of apology for missing our spaghetti dinner." Inside the bag was a delicate silver bracelet with a tiny ballerina charm that complemented the figurine she treasured. Lily's eyes widened with delight as Ethan fastened it around her wrist. "It's beautiful," she whispered, throwing her arms around his neck in forgiveness. Over dinner, they discussed final details for the move, Lily's excitement growing with each mention of her new room. Sarah seemed relaxed, the tension from the previous night's conversation apparently set aside. After Lily was tucked in bed, Ethan joined Sarah on the small balcony where they often ended their evenings. The autumn night was Cool, the city lights creating a tapestry of illumination against the darkness. I made a decision today, Ethan said quietly. About Pinnacle. Sarah turned to him, instantly alert. What kind of decision? I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations, he announced. I've been working with the COO, James Peterson, for months now, preparing him to take on more responsibility. As of next quarter, he'll be handling the operational side while I focus on strategic direction and innovation. Ethan, Sarah began, her expression concerned. You don't have to do this, not for us. I'm not doing it just for you and Lily, he replied, though that wasn't entirely true. I'm doing it because Victor was right about one thing. My focus has shifted. But unlike him, I don't see that as a problem. I see it as an evolution. Sarah studied him carefully. Are you sure about this? Pinnacle is your creation, your legacy. Pinnacle is a company, Ethan said simply. An important one, yes. One I'm proud of, but it's not my life anymore. He reached for the velvet box he'd carried with him all day. You and Lily are. This time, as he opened the box to reveal the elegant diamond ring inside, there were no interruptions, no emergency calls, no disappointed little girls. There was only Sarah, her eyes bright with unshed tears, and the question he'd been waiting to ask. Sarah Collins, will you marry me? Spring returned to New York, bringing with it a gentle warmth that seemed to mirror the contentment that had settled over Ethan's life. 1 year had passed since that fateful birthday in Central Park, a year of profound changes, challenges overcome, and happiness deeper than he'd ever imagined possible. Today marked another birthday, his 35th, but unlike the solitary man who had once sought isolation on a park bench, Ethan now stood in the kitchen of their Brooklyn Heights brownstone, surrounded by the cheerful chaos of family life. Careful with the eggs, sweetie, he cautioned, as Lily, now 5, stood on a stool beside him, her tongue poking out in concentration, as she attempted to crack an egg into a mixing bowl. I'm being super careful, she assured him solemnly. Are these special birthday pancakes? Sarah appeared in the doorway, looking both amused and concerned at the flowery handprints decorating Ethan's expensive dress shirt. I see the breakfast preparation is going well, she remarked, crossing the room to kiss him. Happy birthday again. Best birthday ever, Ethan replied, meaning it completely, though I might need to change before the board meeting. The transition at Pinnacle had not been without challenges. Victor had fought the restructuring, attempting to rally board members against what he called Blake's abandonment. But Ethan had prepared meticulously, securing key allies and demonstrating how James Peterson's operational leadership complemented his own strategic vision. 6 months into the new arrangement, Pinnacle was thriving. The Carson acquisition was proving successful, and even the most skeptical board members had been won over. Victor, outmaneuvered and increasingly isolated, had eventually accepted a generous buyout package, departing for a competitor where he could pursue his ambitions without Ethan's moderating influence. Are you nervous about the vote today? Sarah asked, helping Lily pour blueberries into the pancake batter. Ethan shook his head. James has proven himself beyond anyone's expectations. The board will make his position permanent. And yours? Sarah pressed gently. Executive chairman suits me perfectly. Ethan smiled, wiping flour from his cheek. 3 days a week at the office, focused on the parts of the business I genuinely enjoy, home for dinner almost every night. I haven't missed a single one of Lily's school events this semester. It was true. The balance he'd promised Sarah he would find had finally materialized, not without effort, not without occasional setbacks, but with a sustainability that felt right. Pinnacle continued to grow under the joint leadership, perhaps less aggressively than Victor would have pushed for, but more soundly, with attention to culture and values that had sometimes been overlooked in the early years. Your parents are coming for dinner tonight, Sarah reminded him, moving to set the kitchen table. Your father called yesterday to confirm. The relationship with William and Margaret Blake remained complicated, but had evolved significantly since the tense Hamptons gala. The wedding 6 months ago had been a turning point, a small, intimate ceremony in the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, where Lily had served as flower girl. Proudly scattering rose petals before Sarah walked down the aisle, in a simple but elegant gown. William Blake had surprised everyone by taking a genuine interest in his new granddaughter, bringing her books about architecture and patiently explaining the engineering behind famous buildings. Margaret remained more reserved, her acceptance conditional and careful. But even she had softened somewhat when Sarah announced her pregnancy 3 months ago. "I think my father is secretly excited about having a grandson," Ethan remarked, placing his hand briefly on Sarah's barely visible baby bump. Though he'd never admit it. "He admitted more than you think at the hospital that day," Sarah replied. She was referring to the afternoon 2 months earlier when William Blake had suffered a minor heart attack, a health scare that had shaken the entire family. Ethan had rushed to the hospital, Sarah and Lily insisting on accompanying him despite the late hour. In the sterile waiting room, while Margaret spoke with doctors, William had looked at his son with uncharacteristic vulnerability. "I was wrong about you," he'd said quietly. "About the choices you made, both professionally and—" His eyes had moved to Sarah and Lily, who were getting hot chocolate from a vending machine. "Personally, you found your own path, a good one." Coming from William Blake, it was tantamount to a full-throated endorsement. The moment had marked a shift in their relationship, not a complete reconciliation, but an opening, a possibility of something warmer and more authentic than they'd shared in decades. "The pancakes are ready," Lily announced triumphantly, jarring Ethan from his reflection. She proudly carried a plate stacked with slightly misshapen but deliciously aromatic blueberry pancakes to the table. Breakfast unfolded with the comfortable rhythm they'd established, Lily chattering about her kindergarten projects, Sarah discussing plans for the nursery, Ethan savoring every moment of this ordinary miracle they'd created together. "Oh, I almost forgot," Sarah said, reaching for an envelope on the counter. "This came for you yesterday. Special delivery." The envelope bore the ornate letterhead of Sarah's former university. Curious, Ethan opened it to find an invitation. The school was presenting him with an honorary degree and requesting he deliver the commencement address to this year's graduating class. "They mentioned your work with the Education Foundation," Sarah explained, referring to the non-profit Ethan had established after their wedding. Inspired by Sarah's dedication to teaching and Lily's love of learning, the foundation provided scholarships and resources to single parents pursuing higher education. "The dean was particularly impressed with the childcare centers we've opened on community college campuses." Ethan set the invitation aside, oddly moved by this recognition. Unlike the business awards that had once filled his office, this acknowledgement celebrated something he valued far more deeply, the family he'd found and the difference they were making together. "Will you accept?" Sarah asked. "Only if you—" "Help me write the speech," he replied. "After all, you're the one who taught me what really matters." Later that morning, after Lily had been dropped at kindergarten and Sarah had left for her graduate classes, she'd returned to university to complete her teaching degree. With Ethan's enthusiastic support, he stood in the quiet of their home, taking a moment to appreciate the journey that had brought him here. The brownstone reflected their blended lives, comfortable but not ostentatious, with spaces for family, gatherings alongside quiet corners for work and study. Lily's artwork hung prominently in the living room, including a framed crayon masterpiece of 3 stick figures holding hands that had migrated from his old office. Bookshelves mixed Sarah's beloved classics with Ethan's business texts and Lily's growing collection of children's literature. Photos documented their evolving family, the wedding, Lily's dance recitals, holidays both grand and simple. Before heading to the Pinnacle offices for the board meeting, Ethan detoured through Central Park, finding his way to the bench where everything had changed. It looked ordinary today, just wooden slats and metal arms, one of hundreds scattered throughout the park. Yet sitting there briefly, watching families and couples enjoying the spring morning, Ethan felt the profound significance of this unremarkable spot. Here, in his darkest moment, a little girl in a red coat had offered unexpected kindness. Here, a lonely CEO had glimpsed a different kind of life, one measured not in acquisitions and stock options, but in bedtime stories and family dinners. Here, Ethan Blake had begun the journey from success to significance. His phone chimed with a message from Sarah. "Good luck today, though you don't need it. Love you." Smiling, Ethan rose from the bench and walked toward the park exit, his step light despite the responsibilities awaiting him. The board meeting would confirm James Peterson as CEO, formally establishing the leadership structure Ethan had carefully architected. Later, there would be birthday dinner with his expanding family. William and Margaret Blake attempting civil conversation with Robert and Eleanor Henderson, united only by their mutual love for Lily. The future stretched before him, filled with challenges and joys he could never have imagined that lonely day a year ago. Evening found them all gathered around the dining table in the brownstone, the Blakes, the Hendersons, and at the center, the family Ethan, Sarah, and Lily had created, together. The initial awkwardness between the grandparents had gradually given way to cautious conversation, primarily focused on Lily's achievements and the anticipated arrival of the new baby. "Have you decided on names yet?" Eleanor Henderson asked, passing a serving dish to Margaret Blake in a gesture of domestic diplomacy. "We're considering William for a middle name," Sarah replied, casting a warm glance toward her father-in-law. The older man's expression remained impassive, but those who knew him well could detect the pleased surprise in his eyes. After dinner, while the adults lingered over coffee and dessert, Lily tugged Ethan toward the living room. "It's time for your special present," she whispered conspiratorially. "Mommy helped me make it." The special present turned out to be a homemade book, each page filled with Lily's artwork and Sarah's careful transcription of the child's words. Titled My Dad, Ethan, it chronicled their family story from Lily's perspective. From their first meeting, when you were sad on your birthday, through holidays, everyday moments, and the wedding, when you promised to be my dad forever. The quinceañera final page showed a crayon rendering of their family, now including a baby in Sarah's arms. Beneath it, in Lily's wobbly handwriting, "Thank you for choosing us." Ethan felt his throat tighten with emotion as he gathered Lily into a hug. "Thank you, Princess. This is the best present I've ever received." Over Lily's shoulder, he caught Sarah's eye, her expression mirroring his own gratitude and wonder at the life they'd built together. Later, after guests had departed and Lily was tucked into bed, Ethan and Sarah stood on the small terrace outside their bedroom, watching the lights of Brooklyn Bridge in the distance. The spring night was mild, scented with blossoming trees from the garden below. "Happy with your birthday?" Sarah asked, leaning against him. "Beyond happy," Ethan replied, his arm around her waist. "It's strange to think how different things were a year ago. How empty my life was, despite having everything I thought I wanted." Sarah turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "You know, Lily asked me something interesting tonight while I was putting her to bed. She wanted to know if you were sad before you met us." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I thought maybe you were lonely, not sad. That sometimes people can have lots of things, but still feel like something important is missing." Sarah smiled up at him. "Was I right?" Ethan considered the question, remembering the hollow success that had defined his existence before that. "Fateful birthday. You were exactly right. I had achievement without meaning, connections without closeness." "And now," Sarah prompted, her hand resting over his heart. "Now I have everything that actually matters," Ethan said simply. "Love, family, purpose, the chance to make a difference not just through business but through the lives we touch." He placed his hand over her growing belly, feeling the miraculous future taking shape beneath his palm. Their son would be born into a family built not on obligation or expectation, but on choice and love. The conscious daily decision to put relationships above ambition, connection above acquisition. "You know what I wish for this coming year?" Sarah asked, leaning into his embrace. "What's that?" "Nothing," she replied, smiling. "Absolutely nothing more than what we already have." As the city lights sparkled around them and the spring breeze carried promises of new beginnings, Blake held his wife close, profoundly grateful for the birthday invitation from a little girl in a red coat that had changed his life forever. In the quiet sanctuary of their home, with Sarah in his arms and their children, one sleeping peacefully, down the hall, one still growing beneath her heart, Ethan had found what his success could never provide, a place to belong, to be loved not for what he achieved, but simply for who he was.